Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of Speckled Red Knits. If you've been a longtime viewer, thank you for coming back. If you're a new viewer, it has been 6 months since I last podcasted. A lot of stuff happened. I didn't mean to take a break, but I am super excited to be back. You're probably, if you've been a longtime viewer, you're probably like, where is she? I'm in a new space. This is, if you couldn't tell, a much better setup than what I was working with before. And I'm just excited to show you some knitting. I know I haven't podcasted, but I have been knitting, obviously. So I have a lot of stuff to show. It's probably going to be broken up over 2 episodes because this would just be like a 2-hour episode, which I wouldn't mind. I would probably watch it, but probably not everyone will watch it. So I have a lot of knitting that I've done in 6 months. And I'm going to show you some of it today. All right, so it has been 6 months since I last podcasted. And even though I stopped podcasting, I did not stop knitting. And there's been so many things that I've made. Back in September, actually, no, it was mid-October, I actually went on a trip with my friend Meg. And I did a lot of knitting that was aimed at that trip. You know how like people always talk about when they travel that now they want to buy like a whole new wardrobe for the trip and the trip already costs so much money? That's like what I do with knitting. I'm like, oh, I need to knit myself like an entire wardrobe for this trip, which is not practical if you know how long it takes to knit garments. But I really rose to the challenge. So a lot of these things that I'm going to show you today are, they were like aimed at being pieces that I brought on that trip. I had a very specific aesthetic that I was going for, and it was modern Little Women. And I did not encapsulate it, but I tried. So the first sweater I'm going to show you is this little cutie. This is the Tulip Jumper by Bee Mandarins, I think is what she's called on Ravelry, but it's Melody Hoffman. This is a cropped sweater, and it has this like scalloped hemline. And I've wanted to knit it for a really long time, but because it's cropped, I didn't like really know if I would wear that, but it's so cute. I was originally going to knit it longer, but if you knit it longer, like the thing that's cute about it is the hemline. So if you knit it longer, like it's just not going to like really be like a focal, you know, like it's not going to be, if you knit it longer, you wouldn't like notice the hemline as much. And then it's just kind of like a boring sweater. So I did decide to knit it cropped, and I'm glad that I did. It's something I wouldn't normally wear, but I like it a lot. And I knit this specifically because I wanted to wear it to the orchestra. So we, this is kind of like an impromptu trip that we took. We went to Berlin and the French Alps, actually. And I've always wanted to hear the Berlin Philharmonic, and that's actually why that's why we decided to go. That was like what started the idea of going on a trip. I'm sure I've talked about it in other episodes, but I play French horn and I studied in college, and I really love orchestral music, and the Berlin Philharmonic is like one of the best orchestras in the world. And I always say that like I just wanted to go hear them. And then obviously I couldn't during the pandemic. So when the opportunity to travel, because Europe opened their borders up again this summer, for travel. Once that happened, I really wanted to go on a trip. I had a friend who was going on a trip as well, and I got the travel bug. And so we were able to get tickets to go hear the Berlin Philharmonic. It was a very dramatic process. We heard John Williams actually conducted a concert at the Berlin Philharmonic, and it was amazing. So I knit this sweater for like the very intended purpose of wearing it to the concert, to the Berlin Philharmonic. And I did. I wore it over a dress, so it wasn't like it was like it actually would have looked bad if it were full length and I wore it over a dress. So I think it looks super cute. And I actually just wore this again to the orchestra like 2 weeks ago. So not the Berlin Philharmonic. But yeah, I just wore it again to the orchestra last week. And I just think it's funny that this is like my orchestra sweater now, that I knit a sweater specifically to wear to the orchestra. And yeah, this is like a super simple sweater to knit. For a long time, I had assumed that the scalloped border was knit with short rows. And I'm like, I don't want to knit short rows in ribbing. Like that just sounds like bad. So I had it like in my Ravelry page for a very long time and just never knit it. And it actually was super simple. So if you like ever looked at this and you're like, I don't want to do those short rows, it was actually super easy and it did not take that long. And because this is cropped, this knit up super fast. It's in a worsted weight. So this is a very fast sweater to knit up until the hemline. I mean, it's just like, I think it's a raglan increases. So, yeah, it was super simple and it didn't use a ton of yarn and it knit up really fast. So I would absolutely recommend this pattern. It's so cute. They have it written for a ton of sizes. You can knit it for a baby. They have like baby and toddler sizes. And I think it might be written for more than one weight of yarn. So I would absolutely recommend this pattern. I knit this with, because I'm sure you're wondering what the yarn is. It's the company's called Durarum Natura, and it's a French company, but like you can buy a lot of their yarns in the US, and it's French merino. So it's not like super wash merino. It's still I think it's woolen spun. I think it's like between a woolen and a worsted spun yarn. And they have like beautiful colors. It is like a little more of like a rustic yarn. It's not, it's a little bit fluffy. Like it feels like, it doesn't look like a woolen spun yarn, but it feels like it. But it comes in like a ton of different colors and it's pretty affordable. I think a ball of like the woolen spun yarn of the worsted weight yarn is like 280 yards, which is, that's like normally a worsted weight yarn comes in a ball of, or a skein of like 200 yards. So they are bigger skeins. And I think I only used 2 to knit this. So yeah. Okay, so my next finished object is, it's kind of a bust. I don't have a lot of sweaters that I've knit that I hate. And I want to say I hate this one, but it didn't like turn out how I wanted it to. So I don't remember what the name of this is. It was in an episode, or not in an episode, it was in an edition of Lana magazine, and it finally like came to Ravelry, so you could buy just a pattern and not the whole magazine. And it's so cute. Like the pattern picture, I think I know what I did wrong, but I specifically knit this like to bring it with me on my trip. I finished it pretty late and it was blocking, and I didn't I was like ripping it off the blocking mats to like pack it to leave the next day. And I didn't try it on before I left. And I didn't even weave in the ends. Like that was pretty bold to like not even weave in the ends or try it on and like still like take up suitcase space, like choose it to take up suitcase space. And I should have tried it on because it kind of like fits terribly. It's supposed to be like a little bit oversized. And then if you can see down here, it has like this really cool detail where it's like a split hem and it's like a little bit longer in the back. But where this hits me on my hips, it like catches on my hips. So I think the issue is that I knit it too long. Like I think it would be okay if it stopped like higher up, But because it was a split hem, I didn't know how long to knit it, you know? Like, I've done split hems before, but this is pretty, that's like quite a bit of a split hem. And so I didn't even wear it once on my trip. And it's like relatively, like, it's a big sweater. So it took up a ton of space in my suitcase and I didn't even wear it. I should have tried it on. I knit it specifically for this trip. So I'm like, I'm going to wear it. Like, I didn't spend like all this time knitting this for this trip, not to wear it on the trip. But it turned out so bad that I didn't. So, I mean, like, if you look at it, it looks super long. Like, I should have known. Maybe it grew when I blocked. I could have done a gauge swatch. I didn't do a gauge swatch. I don't usually. So I think the top of it looks fine. I haven't worn this. Like, I wore it to try it on and decide that I hated it. But I have not actually worn it out and about. So I think the top was fine. What I really liked about the sweater is like all of the details, like the raglan increases. Like, that's a nice detail there, how they do it where it's like 3 across instead of just 2. And then when you knit the split hem, there's like this detail that goes down the body the whole time, like here. And then like when you split for the hem, that continues. And it's just like, it's really nice. And it's like one of the things that I loved about the sweater. And I knit it in gray because I thought it would just be like a sweater I would wear all the time. And it just like turned out so bad. So I'll try and like save it. I think I need to just like rip it back, because here's like where where the hem starts. I feel like it needs to like start like 3 inches higher. So it's not a total loss, but it's kind of a bummer. I don't know. When I finish a project and I hate it, which isn't that often, but like my Birkin sweater, that took me so long to finish because I tried it on and I hated it, and it actually turned out fine. But like I can't fix it now because it's just gonna hurt too much to like rip it out in this moment. So eventually, I'll probably fix it. But I don't know. The sweater was fun to knit. It was like some new techniques, like with like the ribbed bits, and yeah, like I like looking at it. I love the way it looks on the model. It's not working for me. I knit it with Barrett Wool Co. Their worsted weight like woolen spun yarn. So it did use a lot of yarn. So I don't know. I feel like woolen spun yarn typically feels like pretty light, but I don't know. This like has a little bit of like weight to it. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I always talk about like the projects that I love and finished, and they're so great. But I think everyone has knit something that they don't love. And I'm here to tell you that I do it too. And here it is. I don't know. There is a Pearl Soho pattern that it's like a sweatshirt style sweater, and I've always like seen that pattern. It's a free pattern, I think, and I've always wanted to knit. Like, I've always wanted just like a gray sweater that's very like sweatshirt like, and that's what I was hoping this would be. And I mean, it probably still could be if I would just fix it. So I think I finished this end of September, or no, it was like mid-October, because I finished it like the night before my trip. And I saw it in the pile, and I'm like, I should talk about this. I should talk about a failed sweater, because it happens. And I don't know. At least now I know that maybe this is not the style of sweater that suits me best. You learn something every day. So yeah, I don't even remember what the pattern was called. I think it was called Moki, like Mokii, but it was in Alana. It was in Alana. I don't know what issue it was, but yeah. It's not the pattern's fault. It's my fault. Okay, so this next finished object was a very lofty goal to knit for this trip. I think me and Meg decided to go on this trip like the beginning of August, end of July, I think. And then we went like mid-October, and work was like super busy. Like that's really why I stopped podcasting, was just because work was a little bit crazy and taking up all of my time. And I still had time to knit, but not really to podcast. And so I don't know why I thought that if I didn't even have time to podcast, that I would have time to like knit a new wardrobe to take to Europe. But I did. Travel is something I enjoy so much. I studied abroad. I know I talk about on every episode how I studied abroad, and it was like 8 years ago at this point. Oh my gosh. No, it was 6 years. It was 6 years ago. Yeah, it was 6 years ago. I studied abroad in Dublin when I was in college, and I got the travel bug, and it was just such a bummer during the pandemic not to be able to travel because, and I know I talk about this every episode, I had a trip planned for April of 2020 that had to be canceled because of the pandemic. So I don't know, just like being able to travel again was just so exciting. And I just like, I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to have like a perfect knit wardrobe to take with me. And I did. I got it all done. Did I put unnecessary pressure on myself to do that? Yeah, I did. I also like sewed like a quilt coat, and I was like sewing that up until like the morning of. But it was so cute. Like it was worth it. It was super cute. So anyway, this next FO was knit for the intended purpose of being a very versatile piece to travel with. And I'm sure a lot of you actually, I mean, I did talk about it on the podcast, so you wouldn't know that I was knitting it, but it is a very popular pattern in the moment. And it is the half and half wrap, the Purl Soho half and half wrap. So this pattern is it called? It's called a mitered triangle or a mitered square. Yeah, it says it in the pattern. It's a free pattern, and it is knit in a fingering weight yarn. So it's knit in linen quill, which is a yarn that Purl Soho makes. And it kind of had a moment. The Caddy Jacks Knits podcast hosted a knit along with Purl Soho, and a ton of people knit it. There was a big giveaway. I totally forgot to enter the giveaway because it ended, like I had to take the pictures and then enter it, like I think the day that we actually we're traveling to Europe. So I didn't enter it, but I did finish it in time that I could have entered it. So linen quill is like this yarn that everyone loves, and it was super annoying because everyone was knitting this pattern, and I just wanted to buy some linen quill, which I had already like knit stuff with before and like loved. It comes in so many colors. It's a fingering weight yarn, and it's like 60% wool, but then it has like linen and alpaca in it. So it has like this halo that you might be able to see it. And everyone like went crazy for this yarn. And I'm like, I already knew about this yarn. Just let me buy it. But it was sold out in so many colors, like all of the pink colors it was sold out in. And so I had to wait to even be able to like buy the yarn to knit this because everyone else is buying yarn to knit this exact pattern. So I did knit it in linen quill. This color is called Rose Granite, and this color is called, I don't know. I want to say it's called newsprint. Maybe. They have a pattern that I think they call the newsprint cowl, but I'm not sure if this is called newsprint. It's marled. It's like it's a 2-ply yarn, so one of the plies is white and the other is like this like charcoal gray. And it's huge. It's a square that you fold in half, and it makes the triangle. So you knit it, like you knit one color first. It's a ton of short rows. So this is like the seam, and it's like you start with a ton of stitches, and then every single stitch gets like wrapped and turned. And it's a commitment, but it's kind of fun because it's just like garter stitch. And And I think I knit this in a month, this is like a ton of knitting. I don't know how I did it, but I just really wanted to bring it on this trip. So, oh, it still has a stitch marker in it. I somehow like dropped a stitch. I did not block this because it's huge. And I was worried that if I blocked it, like it would grow too much. So anyway, when I wear this, I typically wear it around my shoulders like a grandma. And I'm not mad about it because it's super cozy. And I wear it like when I knit in the evening and drink some tea like a grandma. It is so warm. I don't know. I love like a big like shawl to just like put around my shoulders in the winter. So I usually wear it like this. And you can like flip it around and then wear the other color. So I really wanted to like make this to be able to bring when I traveled because I thought it would just like be nice to have on the airplane, and then I could like still wear it once I got there. And it is like really nice to have on the airplane. But it's not, I mean, I know so many people have knit this, but like it's comically large and it just doesn't look good, I don't think. Like this, I feel like I'm wearing like a sea collar or something when I try and wear it like this. So if you have had any success styling this as a piece that you wear to be like an accessory and not to like wear around your shoulders, like tell me. Because I mean, I did use this all the time when I traveled, but I couldn't wear it out. And this was all I brought, like to wear around my neck. Because I was trying to like be mindful of what I was packing. This is all I brought to wear around my neck. And I couldn't, like, it just looks so silly. Which, I don't know. How is everyone else wearing this? I mean, I'm very happy with it. I'm happy to like wear it around the house and stuff. But it does just, I mean, it's hard to wrap this much material around your neck and make it look cute. So I would highly recommend this pattern. It's free. I think you need 3 skeins of each color, and you could use linen quilt. I think it's pretty affordable. I think it's like $16 for a skein, which is pretty good for fingering weight yarn. And it's like 400 yards. So it comes in so many beautiful colors, and I've knit many things in this yarn. I've knit a pullover in it. I think I knit a Vertices Unite in it. It has like just such a beautiful color palette. I wish they would make that palette on more yarns. They came out with a linen quilt worsted, but I've never knit with it. I did knit my Wool and Honey pullover, the honeycomb, like the Andrea Mowry one, in the rhubarb colorway. I'm sure I definitely showed it on the podcast, and it's like this bright pink, and I love it so much. The only issue with that is that the linen gives it some drape, and that sweater was definitely meant to be like knit in a woolen spun yarn. And so it does like kind of like the sweater kind of stretches out because the Wool and Honey is knit in garter stitch in the round, which is like so nice. It's such like a lovely like textured sweater, but garter stitch already stretches. So to combine that with like a linen yarn just like doesn't really work. I mean, I love that sweater, but if I knit it again, and I knit it in linen quilt, I would size down. So I don't think that sweater is meant to have that much ease anyway. So I do want to knit it again. So maybe I would just like size down. But yeah, I love that yarn. I love this. I think the colors are so pretty. I almost did, they have it's a black yarn, but it's because of the linen like doesn't take the dye, or I think they dye the wool separately and then they add in the linen. So even though it's like black, it has like white flecks in it, so it looks heathered. And I almost did that color for my second half. And I think I actually put it on Instagram. and had people vote, and everyone voted for this one, which was great because I already had this yarn. I would have had to have, I had already purchased this to use it, to knit this, and I would have had to have bought the other colors. So I'm super happy with the colors that I picked. This is just so much fun. It's so simple, but it was just like an easy thing to just sit down and knit all the time. And sometimes at work, if I had downtime, I would knit this at work, and it was like a super easy thing to just like pick up, put down. Yeah, I'm super happy with it. I know so many of you have knit this, so I'm super excited that I get to be a part of the half and half triangle wrap club. All right, so the last finished object that I have to show you, this is going to be a very finished object heavy podcast, is this shawl that I knit with my advent calendar that I got from Olan. She has never done an advent calendar before. Actually, don't quote me on that. But she has a mill. She's based in Ireland, and she has a mill now. I think she got it like 2 years ago, and she has a line of mill yarn that she like dyes, and then they spin it in the mill at her studio. And she's been selling that for maybe like a year, or maybe I think it's actually just this summer that she came out with the line, the mill yarn line that she sells at yarn shops. And so she came out with an advent calendar that was half mill spun yarns and then half yarn that she dyes, because she's been dyeing for a long time. And I've never bought an advent calendar before because they're very expensive. Not that they're not worth it, but you get 24 mini skeins and then a full skein that you open on Christmas Day. And I also was hesitant to buy advent calendars before because I didn't know what I would do with all that yarn if it didn't all go together. Like some people do like Christmas themed advents, and they're like they're each like individual like cute like Christmas colors, but together it's like, what do you make with that? And you obviously don't get to see what the color palette is ahead of time. Like you're committing $200 to something that you've never seen before. So I was always very hesitant to do it because of that. But I love her yarn. I've purchased her yarn before, and she has like a really good sense of color theory. And I just thought this would be like such a unique advent calendar to get. And I like knew all the colors would go together. And I just really like the idea of having the mill spun yarns in there. And so I bought it. I bought it in June, like the day that I took the MCAT. So I was feeling super excited to be done with that, and maybe a little bit impulsive. But yes, I did buy her advent calendar, and I'm so glad I did. It was so much fun. I wasn't actually home much in December, so I didn't get to open them like each day. I think maybe until like the 10th, like I opened them each individually, but I was gone at the beginning of December. And then I actually went back to Europe on another trip in December. So there was like one day when I opened up a bunch of them all at once. And yeah, they're so beautiful. The theme of the advent calendar was the winter solstice. And in Ireland, there is a lot of like Neolithic sites. There's a famous site called Newgrange, and it's like this huge dome, and there's a room in it that when the winter solstice happens, the way that the sun's positioned on the winter solstice, it like lights up the room, and it's really hard to like get tickets to go see it that day. I think it's actually free to go to Newgrange, but that day you have to wait like 5 years to actually be able to like visit it on the winter solstice. You can go see it any time of the year, but it's not like magical and glowing any other time of the year. So she like drew a lot of inspiration from, like I don't know what the term for it is, like the early Irish. She took a lot of inspiration from them in the naming and just like the ideas for the colors. So let me show it to you. So this pattern was made for Explorer Knits. I think someone made it for her advent calendar, and her advent calendar was only 20 days. So I had to leave out like 4 colors, but they were like, I wasn't changing the overall like color scape of it. It wasn't made to like be knit with that many colors. So I did leave out like 4, but they were kind of like grays, which they were lovely. I would have knit with them if the pattern had allowed me to. But so this is not technically all 24 colors. It's all 20. It's 20 of my favorite ones. So it does go in order of how you open them. So it starts with like this, it's kind of like a buttery, like white. And it goes into some pinks. I didn't save the band, so I can't like tell you what each color is. I think they're all, they were just made for the Advent, so you wouldn't actually be able to buy them. It goes in pinks and then into yellow. This is my favorite section right here. This, like where it's like the pinks and the yellows. I think it just like reminds me of like a Wes Anderson movie, those colors together. And then it goes into greens, really beautiful greens. And then it fades again into like this like reddish brown magenta. So I don't think there's a way for me to like hold it up so you can see all of it, but maybe you get the idea. It's lovely. I really wanted a pattern that was just like very simple and just like focused on the color. I've seen like other Advent projects where, people like write the pattern to be used with like an Advent calendar. And I just wanted the focus to be the colors and not really like the actual piece. So this was great. I'll do show notes this time and I'll link this below. I always say I'm going to do show notes and I don't, but I feel like this is a chance to start something new. So I will link the pattern in the show notes. I highly recommend it. It's just garter stitch and like increases. You do have to follow along with the pattern though, because she has you like the fading changes like in this. So you can kind of see like in this section, it's like every other row is a different color. But then like in this section, she kind of like changes. It's like every 3 to make it look more blended. So you do have to like keep like following along with the pattern, but I mean, it's garter stitch and it's the only thing that you're following along with is just to see like the fading bits, like how she changes it. But the only thing that is changing in the pattern is, when you use which color. It's, just like the increases are very simple. You get to the middle and then you start decreasing. And yeah, it was just like a lovely pattern to knit. Would very much recommend it. Would very much knit it again. I haven't worn this. This is pretty big. So again, I've just kind of like been doing the grandma thing when I wear it at home. And yeah, it's so pretty. Yeah, I love it so much. I'm so glad that I bought this Advent calendar. I was like on the fence about it. I'm on the fence about it every year. Because you have to buy it in like June or May or July is usually when everyone is selling them because they have to plan, which is fine. But it's like so much money to spend at once to not get anything for months. And so I've never bought an Advent calendar before this, and I would absolutely like buy hers again for sure because everything went together and it was like very easy to use it in a pattern. I think the only thing I didn't say was it's fingering weight. Most Advent calendars are fingering weight. So yeah, I'm so happy with it. I love this section right here. It's just so happy. It's what you need in the Midwest in the winter. It's just something really like colorful to keep you warm and happy. Okay, so I don't have that many whips to show you right now. I have so many finished objects. I can't show them all in one podcast. That's not fair. I need to like spread them out. So my whips are pretty pathetic. I finished a sweater a couple weeks ago and I knit a pair of socks like right after that. And I started knitting another pair of socks and that was pretty much like all I was knitting. And I do that sometimes just because like I don't want to like figure out something to cast on immediately. Like I knit a sweater and like I just don't want to think about another pattern. I just want to knit something really easy. So I knit a bunch of socks, and I just started knitting another sweater, which feels good. So there's just like needles sticking out of this in every way. There's a lot of stuff in this bag. So this is very unexciting. I'm sorry. When I look at this, and when you look at this, you're probably going to say, is that for a baby? No, it's for me, a human. And I'm not sure. I'll spare you like me trying to fit this over my head right now. I feel like it stretches enough that it'll be okay. It does look a little bit small. I have cast this on twice already, so I'm not inclined to tear it out. I knit it like the pattern said, like it's enough stitches, so I think it'll be fine. I think it'll block out. My issue with like neckbands is I really don't like it when like I never do a stretchy cast on because I don't like them to stretch out. Like I like them to sit very nicely, and I feel like if you like to loosen it up, the neckband would like end up stretching out later. So I like looking at it like this, like I feel like it'll be fine. But looking at it like this, it does look like it's made for like a toddler. But this is the top of a colorwork sweater. And the pattern is called Sonder, and it was made for Espace Tricot. It was for their yarn line that they came out with that they make, like it's an in-house yarn line. It's made for them, I guess. And I bought the yarn like right when it came out this summer, and I had no plans, like no patterns picked out to knit with it. And someone came out with a pattern that was specifically meant for this, for their yarn, their DK weight yarn. And I'm like, how perfect. I don't have to gauge swatch if I'm knitting a pattern made in that yarn. No, I did gauge swatch actually. That's very bad advice. Don't do that. Do as I say, not as I do, is the saying, I believe. I've fallen into that trap before where I'm like, well, if I just use the yarn that the pattern was written in, then I don't have to gauge swatch. That's not true. You probably knit differently than the person that wrote the pattern, and your gauge could be different, even though it's the same yarn. I did gauge swatch. I don't always gauge swatch. I think it's fine. It looks small, but they always look small. I don't know. So I'm just about to start the color work. So I'm using this color, which is called the Under the Duvet. I think that's what it's called. It's a really lovely yarn. It's like I think it's like a BFL Masham, so it has like a little bit of a halo to it, and it's non-superwash, so it's very woolly, and all of their colors are so beautiful. So this is my colorwork color. So I can never tell if this is like blue or gray. I think it's just like a mix. It's like a chameleon color. People, that's what people call these, like a paint color that looks different in like different lights. They always call it a chameleon paint color, and I feel like that's what this is. This is I can't remember what this one is called. I should have grabbed the ball bands. I actually wound this yarn up I think to take with me the first time I went to Europe to knit a sweater. And of course, we always think we're gonna knit so much on vacation, and then like you knit on the plane ride and that's it. And that's exactly what happened. I think I like brought this overseas just to bring it back in the same form. So yeah, it's a beautiful pattern. I think it's knit on size 4, so I'm hoping I changed the needle size for the color work. I did not. I need to remember to do that before I jump in. I've done that before, where I start knitting and I forgot to like go up a needle size for the color work, and you definitely notice it. Like it's not written in any patterns that you're supposed to do that, to change the needle size for color work, but you should, because I've not done that before, and it, like, you can see it looks tighter and it looks bad. So it's a little tip for you if you've never knit in color work. All you do is you go up one needle size when you start doing the color work, because it's naturally just going to be tighter fabric because of the way you're, carrying the floats. And so if you just go up a needle size, it usually helps even out like the gauge. So you don't have a gauge difference between like the two halves of your sweater. So yes, not very exciting. I really tried yesterday to sit down and like at least get a little bit of color work so that this was not just like a boring neck to show you. But I didn't. And this will probably be done in its entirety by the next time I podcast. So maybe I'll post like a progress picture on Instagram for you to see. But yes, it's a Sonder sweater. It's in a DK weight. It's super cute. I'll put it in the show notes. I promise. Okay, so the only other work in progress that I have to show you is something I probably show every episode. It's just a sock. It's a basically done sock that I just haven't finished. I've only been knitting socks for a few years because I didn't want to. I didn't want to knit them, really, but I have like all this fingering weight yarn that like doesn't go with other stuff. So it's like, what am I gonna knit? Like a weird mismatched shawl. So I kind of started knitting socks out of necessity. When I first started knitting them, like I kind of didn't see the point because they don't fit in a lot of shoes. Maybe for some people, but I guess all the shoes I had, like they did not fit in. And so like you could just wear them around the house, which is fine. But it's like, I don't know. I didn't see the point in knitting them. Now I have a pair of boots that actually fit a knit sock, and I wear these all the time. So I have like a renewed interest in knitting socks, and so I'm trying to like knit through all of like the skeins of sock yarn that don't go with anything else, and this is one of them. This is I think it's by Lichen and Lace, and it's called Sunburnt Lobster. And I was at a yarn shop with my mom, and I said how much I like this and how I see it every time we are at the yarn shop. And she tried to buy it for me for my birthday without me seeing, but I saw her buying it. Or maybe it was like the person checking her out like was really loud about it. And she's like, darn it, I was trying to buy this for you for your birthday, because the yarn store is in Virginia. Like it's not close to where we live. But it's called Sunburnt Lobster. And it's so fun. It's like orangey and purple. And I don't know. There are a lot of like colors that I would not normally wear in a sweater that are just fun to like knit into socks. And because no one really sees it. People like kind of see it, but it's just for you, right? So anyway, this is just a very basic vanilla sock. I never knit anything fun. My mom got me the Lana book it's the 52 weeks of socks. So it has 52 sock patterns in it. And she got it for me for my birthday. So it hasn't been that long. And I just like looked through it and I'm like, could I actually convince myself to like knit anything besides a vanilla sock? Because I don't know, it's just fun to have like a simple like project that you know how to do, that you've done like a ton of times, that you're just like always working on. So maybe I will have like a vanilla sock all the time, and then maybe I'll like have another one that's like a little more involved. But yeah, this is just like the Susan B. Anderson, like how I knit my socks pattern. I think it's the one that she sells has the short row heel, or no, it's the afterthought heel, which I have knit and I don't like. It kind of falls down on my foot, but on her blog, you can just like add in a gusset instead, like the heel flap and gusset, and it's free. It's on her blog, and it works with that pattern, her like how I knit my socks pattern. And so that's what I always do. I always do a gusset, which I hate. I hate knitting the gusset. I would much rather just do an afterthought heel, because then all you do is like knit a tube up until the toe, but they fall down on my foot. So this is super annoying. I always think of, there was an American Girl, like the American Girl doll series. You know how they would write books that went along with the dolls? I think it was Molly, when she was like the World War II doll, and all of her classmates they all like got together and they were knitting socks to send to the soldiers. And when everyone got to the heel flap and gusset, or I think it was a heel turn, no one could do it. They were like 9-year-olds, and like no one could do it, and everyone was crying, and they ended up just taking the socks and like cutting them and like making blankets instead. So every time I do a heel turn, I think of that book, and I'm like, it's so hard, but I could do it. It's not hard. It really isn't. Probably for 9-year-olds it would be, but it's it's easy. It's an annoying heel to do, but it's what works best for me. So that's what I knit. So just a very easy vanilla sock. And yeah. So as far as stash acquisitions go, I'm trying to be really mindful of what I'm purchasing, and I'm trying to knit through what I have because I have a lot of yarn. And I don't actually like having a ton of yarn. When I was knitting in college, I would buy yarn like specifically for projects and then immediately knit with it. Like it would never languish because I was poor in college. I was a poor college student. And so I didn't have like a ton of extra money to just like be buying yarn for no purpose to like sit on a shelf. And then after college, when I had more disposable income, that's kind of like when my stash started. And it's still not a lot compared to like what I've seen that other people have. I try to be like pretty mindful of buying things with a project in mind. I very rarely, like I never buy like a sweater's quantity of yarn without an idea of what I want to knit with it. So I'm really trying to knit through my stash this year, or just like make a dent in it, because I did make a dent in it last year. I'm sure I told you all this line last year that I'm just knitting from my stash. I did make a dent in it, but then I like filled it back up. So there are not a ton of stash acquisitions. I think I only have 2 to show you. And the first is this yarn. This yarn is so bright and I love it. And I bought this for kind of a silly reason. And it's because I want to knit a hat. Like it's not a pattern that exists. I mean, it exists somewhere for somebody. Somebody knit the hat. But if you've ever seen Life Aquatic, it's a Wes Anderson movie, and they all wear these red hats in the movie. Like all of the people on the ship wear these like little red beanies, and it's like this color red. And the color is called Peaks Fairy, and it's by Quince & Co. And I don't know, I watched the movie recently, and I'm like, I just want that hat for like it. Does this look good with red hair? No, not really. Will I get lost in the woods wearing this? No, I won't. So I bought this like a month or 2 ago, and I have not knit the hat yet. It would be super easy to knit. But I did buy this for a specific thing. It's kind of a crazy color, but I don't know. I just really want to have that hat that's out of all the Wes Anderson movies. It's probably like my second favorite one. I would say Moonrise Kingdom is my first favorite Wes Anderson movie, but I like Life Aquatic too. There's actually a postcard back there that says Esteban was eaten. And if you've seen Life Aquatic, that's like one of the first lines in the movie. So yeah, so I did buy this for a purpose, and hopefully I'll knit it soon because it's almost March and it'll still be cold where I live for a little bit. But if I want to wear it this year, I should like knit it soon. So the only other stash acquisition I have to show you is kind of like a fun one. It's something I wouldn't normally buy. I don't like buying like clubs or mystery things because I've been burned before. I did a club once, and I thought it was like by a dyer that like I would love everything that she would send, and I actually hated like all of it. And I bought it on a single ply yarn, and I thought they would all go together and I could like do a shawl, but they don't go together. And it was like a 3 skein club, and I've never knit with them. And like it's like pretty expensive. It was like $80. And so I'm always super hesitant to like buy a club or something where you don't know what you're getting. But I'm sure you all know who Stress Knits is, and she makes beautiful yarn. She's like pretty subdued. Her colors, not in a bad way. They're just like they all go together. They're very lovely. They're very like wearable. Nothing is ever like crazy. Like all of her yarn like goes with together. And she was doing a mini skein like mystery set based on a flower. And for February, it was the rose, and I bought it because I knew it would be pink. So she does so many pinks that are beautiful, and I knew I would love it. So she does this it's a new thing. She does it every month and it's based on a different flower. So I don't know if it'll still be up by the time we get the podcast up, but the flower she's doing for March is the daffodil. So yeah, this was just inspired by different types of roses and it's so cute. I don't know what I'm going to knit with it. Maybe I'll like keep buying them and then like knit that Advent shawl. That would kind of be fun. But yeah, I love that. They're just lovely. Cute little pink mini skeins. It's just like, yeah, it's an 80/20, just like superwash sock yarn. So worst comes to worst, I can always knit socks with it. But this is so cute. I'm so glad that I got this. All right, so this is the end of the podcast. I'm so glad to be podcasting again. It's a lot of life just got in the way, as life does. Work was super busy. I was traveling for personal and then work reasons. I was gone all of November and into like the beginning of December. I was not in my hometown. I was working. And I think during November, that entire month, I knit a pair of socks. We were super busy. We were like working weekends. And it was crazy. This whole job was crazy. So everything is calmed back down and I can podcast again. So it was such a treat to like be back here today. We got this new setup. It's pretty cool. I played no part in it. If you've been around here long enough, you've probably heard me talk about my project bags. So let me grab one just to show you. This is not in the shop. This will be in the shop, but I'm trying to like clear some stuff out. So this is me, Speckled Red. You can find me on Etsy. I'll put it in the show notes that I'm definitely going to make. I'm trying to kind of like clear some older things out because I have some fabric that I'd really love to use, but I just want to get rid of some stuff in the shop. So I was going to do a 20% discount to you, but there's a war in Ukraine. So I would really prefer to donate just 20% of the proceeds to an organization that is helping with that. So I do have one picked out. And again, if you've been around here long enough, you've heard me talk about how awful it was to be a first responder during a pandemic. So the organization we're going to donate 20% to is called the International Medical Corps, and they just are helping provide first responders to the situation, making sure they have equipment. And as someone who was a first responder, it is a thankless job and it's super important though. And I think this would be a great way to help that out. Thank you so much for coming back. I know it has been a while, and if you have been a longtime viewer and you came back after all this time, thank you so much. Thank you for coming back. And I kind of ghosted everyone there for a minute. Please follow me on Instagram. I'll link that below. I've been really bad about using my like Speckled Red Instagram account, and I would love to post more on there for you and interact with you more. Sometimes I put up polls. I think it would be lovely to use Instagram in tandem with YouTube. So follow me on Instagram. Sometimes I do a giveaway. Maybe I'll start doing more giveaways on Instagram and I'll increase engagement on Instagram that way. But yeah, give me a follow, like and subscribe. Thank you for coming back after such a long break. It's been lovely.